You are now recognized for 5 minutes for your oral testimony.
Chairman Hill, Ranking Member Waters, Chair Wagner, Ranking Member Sherman, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on behalf of my organization, Americans for Financial Reform. Formed in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis, we're working to lay the foundation for a strong, stable, and ethical financial system, one that serves the economy and the nation as a whole. My testimony focuses on the erosion of the passive investment infrastructure's ability to protect the millions of working people who invest their hard-earned money in low-cost index funds to secure a dignified retirement and meet other financial goals, and what would be necessary to robustly protect these investors. To illustrate this erosion, I will use SpaceX as an example. SpaceX went public earlier this month at a sky-high valuation divorced from the company's fundamentals. However, it is expected to soon start appearing in index funds without a proper seasoning period due to recent rule changes by index providers, setting the stage for early investors to cash out while leaving retirement savers holding the bag. To make matters worse, most SpaceX investors will have close to no tools for redress in the event they are harmed by wrongdoing on the part of the company, Musk, or other insiders. SpaceX is trying to ban class actions and force lawsuits into Texas Business Court or arbitration, both notoriously insider-friendly fora. SpaceX was able to include a forced arbitration provision due to the SEC making it about face, effectively allowing companies to block a powerful tool to combat corporate fraud and misconduct. SpaceX is also taking advantage of Texas corporate law provisions that make it exceedingly difficult to bring claims under state law to hold corporate insiders accountable for wrongdoing. In the meantime, regular shareholders are being shut out of providing meaningful input. Musk retains 85% voting power in a multi-class share structure where holders of one class of shares have 10 times the voting rights of shares available to the public, along with special governance rights. One of the implications of this structure is that only Musk can fire himself. Meanwhile, the SEC has proposed rules that would permit SpaceX and other large companies to make significantly less disclosures compared to what large public companies are currently required to make. Investors and policymakers have expressed concerns about these developments. Ranking Member Waters engaged with S&P on its proposals that would have allowed SpaceX and other recently public, unprofitable, large companies with small floats to be fast-tracked into the S&P 500. The AFL-CIO and Americans for Financial Reform Education Fund had written in strong opposition to these changes. S&P ultimately decided against making these changes at a significant victory for the many workers saving for retirement whose investments track the affected indexes. Now I'd like to make some recommendations. Given that the passive investment infrastructure is increasingly shutting off avenues for regular investors to get their voices heard and further their interests, Congress and future regulators need to step in. Despite index providers shaping how trillions of dollars are invested and the prominent role they play in many people's retirement security, they are largely unregulated. This needs to change. Additionally, it is important for asset managers of index funds that do owe fiduciary duties to the index funds they manage to be further regulated so they do not effectively outsource duties to largely unregulated index providers or use their voting power to rubber stamp management decisions. Because exchanges compete to attract listings and corporate insiders decide where companies are listed, market pressures structurally favor the interests of corporate insiders over regular investors. The same is true for state corporate law, as insiders decide where a company is incorporated. Congress needs to create a corporate governance floor to effectively disrupt this set of incentives and protect long-term investors. The SEC should recommit to its investor protection mission by requiring robust disclosures, disallowing forced arbitration, and having a more public, thorough process for reviewing registration statements. Congress should consider setting more explicit and stringent requirements for the SEC to prevent the backsliding on its investor protection mission. Lastly, bailouts. Increasingly, passive investments, especially 401ks, are at risk of becoming exit liquidity as insiders and other powerful financial players sell at arguably inflated prices to workers saving for retirement. Regular investors are being put in a position to bear the losses in the event that there's a drastic market correction. Should these events transpire, Congress must not bail out the powerful players that benefited from this arrangement and instead focus on protecting regular investors, families, and communities. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony on these issues, and I look forward to your questions.